Blob has finally been nerfed.
But guest, it's just an OTA. That's just numbers, right?
Oh, it's more than numbers. Welcome on in, folks. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and the OTA Plus has dropped for Marvel Snap. Blob and a boatload of cards are all being changed, so we're going to take a look at what the devs have to say about it, give you my thoughts, and just break down everything that's happened. So if you like today's content, make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on the OTA. What do you like, what do you not like, and what would you do different? Because I think the hot take here is going to be about Blob. So let's hop right into it. Blob has been nerfed two different ways. They are going outside of their normal cycle of an OTA in doing just numbers. They're able to implement a further adjustment because of how dominant Blob has been since he released into the game. So he's going from a 6-4 with his current ability to now being a 6-0 on reveal. Merge cards from your deck into this until it gains 15 or more power, and then the same ongoing if it can't be moved. So in the breakdown here, they explain a couple of things, and I'm glad that they did. Number one, why was he a 6-4? They were worried about Shadow King and that he would lose all stats and that would actually become an issue, but he's not going down to Shadow King. People aren't Shadow Kinging Blob. So that's not really an issue, so they can take away all of his power that way. But then there's the unpredictability of absorbing the entire deck. I'm glad that Glenn has come out publicly and said that this is one of the most dominant cards in Marvel Snap in almost every metric, almost. So to have him go down like this, he needed something unique. So what's cool about this effect is that with the until it gains 15 or more, that does mean there is the variability piece, and the whole second paragraph here is breaking down why variability on Blob is important. Kudos to Jeff Hooglin for doing the math out on the most popular versions of Blob decks on an auto generation of 10,000 games. How big does he actually get regularly? 50% of the time, he's between 15 and 20. The other 50, it scales anywhere as high as 34. That's his absolute ceiling maximum possible potential if he gets filled up to 14 and then hits an Infinite as the final card, which would bring him to 34, therefore crossing that 15 threshold. So that's how that's gonna work. Make sure you understand that when you're trying to factor in what is your potential Blob counter going to be. More often than not, if you're now facing him, consider that he's going to be a 620. If you know you're playing a Blob deck, expect 620 and try to battle up against that, because 50% of the time, he should hit that as his ceiling. So I think, to me, this adjustment kind of hones Blob to being really, truly the Thanos card. Without Thanos and the ability to take out ones, I don't know if Blob really has much of a home anywhere else. We've been running him in Shuri combinations. He's very successful there too. The Electro ramp versions are very successful. But to me, this almost anchors the idea that he needs to be, most likely, in a Thanos deck, and finding him outside of that is nothing short of a surprise. So who knows, maybe we start seeing some Black Knight combinations in there where you pick and choose your battle of, are you getting an Ebony Blade for the Infinite, or are you absorbing it with the Blob as an over-the-top piece instead of having a downside? Like, there's a couple of different ways we could look at how to run Blob now, knowing that he has a limit, but it's probably just gonna be in Thanos. Overall, for what this change is, I do like it. I still think that it's incredibly strong though, and because of that dynamic range of how big is too big for this ability to go over, they're looking at the downside of this card being, well, you could pull under. I'd be curious to see from Second Dinner how many decks are running Blob outside of Thanos versus in Thanos, because outside of Thanos, I could justify the 15 or more, but he's gotta be at least 80% of the time in a Thanos deck, if not more. Therefore, he's gonna hit that 15 power. It's a good change, and I'm glad that they're implementing this now rather than us having to wait 2 more weeks for another patch to then have this roll out. But this one needed the longest conversation, in my opinion, because there's a lot going on here. They like the fact that he's variable. They like the fact that he's big and strong and can't move. The question still remains, though, how big is too big? Speaking of big, beefy cards, Destroyer's getting an extra power here. And again, we see them really being careful when it comes to the general power in Series 1, Series 2, because we see the power creep on the top end. We're seeing our Maximus increasing those 2 costs now going up to a 6. We see Gladiator now coming out, increasing those 3 costs up to a maximum of 8. So some of these older cards that are strong for their cost, I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see this pattern. So Destroyer is the first of this element, going from 15 power to a 16 power. It doesn't make or break him in my opinion, but it does just, spice it up a bit. Viper also comes in and gains an extra power as well. I know, it's not the adjustment many of us wanted for Viper. We wanted her back at a 2 cost. And I can understand a bit as to why they're still hesitant. They're mainly looking at that prevention of Viper into Havoc on turn 4 and the possibility of on turn 3 dropping down both a Hood plus Viper. They are really strong combos. Let's be honest here, people. They're really strong combos. Even Sentry into Viper, if you've left the lane entirely alone, that's dropping a 10 in one lane and basically a 14 in the other on turn 6. That's pretty darn strong. So I can kind of get it. But there's one specific thing that I want to focus on in this, where it's that bottom sentence. Another is that it increases the design space for building cards like the Hood as 2 cost cards, because Viper can gift them on curve. This leads to me saying that maybe there is more coming for Junk in the future. I like the idea of what this could potentially do. It would be a lot of fun to have more card generation cards with a negative effect, like a 2, say it's a -5. So a 2 -5 that gives you a 2/5. Or a 2, well, actually it'd have to be better than a demon. So what, a 2/8? And then you'd have to be able to gift that. That's a unique play line, and I like that for the future of Viper. It doesn't make her feel any better now, so we're not going to play her now. Let's call it what it is. The 1 power isn't going to change the fact that she costs 3 to have that mechanic roll out. Her play increasing, I don't see that really happening. Okay, we'll wait. Yeah, Celine isn't going to necessarily be the best card to Viper over nowadays. As you see, she gained 3 power. They brought her to the standard 1 cost, 1/2, and basically said, hey, we messed up with the changes that ended up happening to Viper and Black Widow and how we thought it would really be great for Celine because we made those changes to those cards, and yeah, it didn't really work out the way that we thought it would. So I guess they were expecting more of us to regularly Viper over that Celine and get that combo to land with Black Widow. But Black Widow being a 3 cost, yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon, because now you're, again, choosing your battles. That's an issue. It's cool, but the only thing that I could think of that actually makes something unique and new here, maybe we start seeing a unique Cerebro 2 variation that runs Celine and the Goblins. Now we're talking. Now we're talking, because you got those to hit on down, and with all of the extra power that comes out of the Cerebro decks, it might even be able to target Cerebro. Take that -3 off of him. That's okay. You're gaining extra buffs across the entire board, so it could balance it out. I think there's something that could be potentially here with Celine and Cerebro 2. That's the only other use case I can now see for her in this. But yeah, keep an eye out. I think Celine may start making little cheeky appearances now that she's a 1/2. And speaking of 1/2, Electra. Look, many of us have been talking about an Electra change for a long time. Long time. The most common one that I've heard out there is make her a 2 cost that could kill a target 2 cost. They're thinking about it. They go into some detail here talking about that maybe there's a way to do something unique and different with her because of her lore and how important she is to Marvel and the fan base that surrounds her. She's got great variants. They are basically, in this paragraph, I read this as, look, we know she's bad, but this is what it's got to be for now. So here, we'll give you an extra power. To me, though, it means nothing because of one word, Kyera. As long as Kyera exists, this means nothing. I'm sorry. This is not a good card in today's meta. Yay for Electra. Woo! Now, Zoo is going to love this one. Love this one. I'm a huge fan of this one right here. They're dropping a whole cost off of Dazzler. So what this does now for me is solidify this as just as important of a regular staple piece for any zoo deck that you choose to build from this point moving forward. It's going to be so valuable to get her up to a 2/8 by filling the board, because now it fits on curve. You're not looking at sacrifices of when are you going to maybe want to put her out on that lane. Even getting her up to a 2/6 isn't, see, it's just reflex at this point. A 2/6 is really good stats. Now, yes, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to have that same synergy that you had previously with your whatever those guys are called, you know, that guy with the little surfboard. There we go. Yeah, Silver Surfer. It's not going to be the same way with him necessarily, but Brood is just as valuable, who they highlight here in particular. So she's guaranteed to be a 2/4 with Brood. So your Patriot decks also are looking pretty good, not just your Zoo decks. I think that this is an incredibly valuable card right now in Marvel Snap, a 2/8 that's regularly going to be able to drop on the board, because you can then also put Kyera down on turn 3. And then this garbage. Okay, we gotta talk. They're adjusting Herc. They're giving him a power. They straight up said, he released weaker than we'd like. You think? We all knew that one. So we're adding a little power. They're trying to find an interesting move card at 4 cost. We know that they don't work well. It's the same reason that Spider-Man 2099 does not work well at all. Because Move is a deck that's based on little cards doing a lot, right? Just like how a bounce deck works. You can't build a very expensive bounce-focused card. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense for that style of deck, because that's not what the motif and the energy and the play of that deck is going to generate. Move is the exact same way. You're looking at putting down little cost cards, throwing them all over the board with multiple drops all over the place, and ramping them up because of the intricacies that you have to execute successfully. So you're still navigating location spaces, you're looking at the locations themselves, enemy effects, you're still trying to mitigate all of that, and that's where the difficulty of move decks come from. It shouldn't be, because they're expensive. Now, to those who are thinking, what about Heimdall? Heimdall validates his expense because he's a 6 cost that literally moves the entire freaking board. Everything moves over there, which means all of those rampable cards we're talking about, like Vulture and Dagger and all of these other move effects, we'll get to Dagger in a second, all of them are able to execute simultaneously because of that. Plus, he has 6/8 stats. So for one more stat and all of that movement, he's justified. Hercules, on the other end, his issue was not that he was a weak card because he wasn't sustaining enough on his lane. It's about getting his effect to activate. I am not a fan. Look, they could make this a 4/9, a 4/10 even. It would not validate him for me into a move deck, because those 1, 2, 3 power mean nothing to me compared to an extra Vulture move that gives 5, or an extra Dagger move that could give me 6. You know what I mean? That's where the issue is with Hercules. I personally would nominate him being a 3/4. Put him on the 3 cost curve, so he's still expensive, quote unquote, to play. But once he's down, he's down. At 3 cost, I think he is a much more valuable card and could bring Move over the top to being competitive all by himself. At 4 cost, I'm losing 2 potential movements right there. I could play my Dagger into Doctor Strange. That's a lot of power I'm sacrificing for him. The effect is good. We like the effect. Maybe tweak the effect so the enemy can't proc his ability. It's so close to being a really, really good card. So close to being a really good card, especially with cards like Dagger. Dagger is also going to get a really nice buff here. This doesn't look like much, but if you play Dagger in Move, and you know how to, more importantly, play Dagger in Move, this validates Dagger tremendously. Even now in Phoenix Force decks, with all of the stones of Thanos that are out there right now, many lanes are constantly full. So to have this go from a 2/2 that gives +2s to a 2/0 that gives +3s, you easily make up for that. Easily. One move to a full lane, and this is going to become a 2/12. Yet alone if you have a way to move her multiple times. This is an incredibly strong card now with these +3s, and we know that Second Dinner is very hesitant to have +3s. We saw what happened with Silver Surfer. Dagger makes me now want to play Move. So I'm probably going to play Move on stream, on Twitch. I'm excited to play this card, probably more than any of the others. Dagger introduces Move to being potentially really good again. That's what I'm excited about. So that extra scaling from her and a couple of the other adjustments that have happened in this week's OTA bring for some unique content for us to look forward to for the next 2 weeks. Overall, a lot of this OTA was needed. Some of this is just niche and fun. I'm curious to see how it's actually going to affect the meta. Is Blob going to be too strong still? Are we going to see the rise of move decks because of Hercules and Dagger? Will Selene and Elektra make a new C2 deck? I don't know what's going to happen. You let me know if you're going to be playing any of these cards now because of the changes that have happened. So let me know down in the comments. I appreciate you listening into today's video, hearing my thoughts on what's going on with the state of Marvel Snap. I'm excited to see the next 2 weeks of play because we do not have an update or adjustment next week. It is the off week. So whatever we have now, we're stuck with for the next 2 weeks, people. Get ready, get used to it. I'll see y'all next time.